What's up everybody, welcome to this review of Star Trek Discovery Season 3. Here, the Discovery has been transported into the future after the events of Season 2 in order to save everything they know and love. And things aren't quite what they expected. The Federation has been significantly reduced and criminals are running the galaxy. And the big problem, which is the big central mystery of this, is how has all this happened? Well, it turns out that warp travel doesn't exist anymore. Why? Well, that's the whole drive of the narrative. What did I think of Star Trek Discovery Season 3? I didn't like it. Yeah, I'm very disappointed by this season. So let's just go into what I thought of the first two seasons just to begin with briefly. Season 1 I thought was okay. I think it had some pacing issues, I think it had some tonal issues, but it got better as it went on. Very enjoyable season. Season 2 I thought was great. It started off with a really good core central mystery. It really added some new, cool, interesting characters. It was just a really good show, I thought, in Season 2. So I'm really disappointed by Season 3 because right from the word go, well actually not quite right from the word go, but the first two episodes it really does a decent job of establishing where the characters we know and love from the past two seasons are. So the first episode focuses on Michael Burnham, the second episode focuses on the rest of the crew at the Discovery, saying, wow, here they are in this new galaxy, because they are in separate places. So it's all about them trying to reconnect. It starts off interestingly, and it's all about them reconnecting, establishing mysteries, and then from that point on, the main story gets going. The problem though, is that from that point on, the main story isn't that interesting. Because the whole point of the main story is what was the burn? The burn being this big event that somehow disabled the ability to use warp travel. And it's just not that compelling, it's not that interesting. I didn't really care about the burn all that much throughout this season. And it also doesn't help when you're transporting your crew and characters 1,000 years into the future, I think it is roughly. And this new future that they're in, because they are limited by where they can go and how fast they can go there and who they can interact with, it's very bland, to be honest. There's not a lot that made me go, wow, there's not a lot that's felt necessary or super interesting. So the new Federation, for example, they're just a bunch of ships sitting in space, it seems. Not all that interesting. We do go to see Earth very briefly, but we don't get an idea of what's actually going down on Earth. The most interesting stuff is actually the stuff with the Vulcans and the Romulans. And that's actually one of the best episodes of the season, I think, where we do see the effects of their history and their relationship and what's happened to their planet as a result of Spock in Next Generation. The way in which it connects to past Star Trek shows is really cool, I think, in that way. But I don't think it helps either when the primary villains are just criminals, they're thugs, they're gangsters, and none of them feel all that well developed, none of them feel like they're doing anything different or unique from very stereotypical villains or gangsters. The main villain, for example, is a character called Osira, who they try to build up as this mysterious figure. It's not until later on in the season where we actually finally see her, and she's just a bit boring. She's just a bit stereotypical. Nothing against the actor playing them. I think they do a very fine job with what they're given. In fact, the acting across the board, all the actors, I think, do a really good job with what they're given. It's just what they're given isn't the juiciest or most interesting of stuff this season. But it so often feels like this is Star Trek trying to be Star Wars, and it's just not working. The two universes do not collide in this way very well at all, because you've got this typical Star Trek, more sci-fi stuff, with the Star Wars, more fantasy stuff, and this season is really trying to dabble in the fantasy side of things, and it just feels odd. It feels tonally off. It doesn't feel like it's suitable for Star Trek at times. So much so that when it comes to explaining some of the answers to the mysteries, it really delves into like the fantastical side of things, and not in a way that maybe go, oh wow, that's cool, that's interesting, but more in a way that's like eye-rolling and groan-inducing. It was very cheesy, some of the explanation for some of the mysteries. But I will say that the final couple of episodes, despite the answers being very unsatisfactory and being very groan-inducing and cheesy, there are some exciting action scenes in those things. The second last episode, for example, where things really are starting to pick up, is probably the best episode of the season, where it is building up the tension, the suspense, where everything is starting to collide into one place. But again, it's just a shame that it's got this fantastical side of the story which just doesn't make much sense. And I will say that while I was disappointed by this season, I am hopeful for the future. I do like where the season ends and what could potentially happen next season. So I'm not done with Star Trek Discovery. I do just think this is a blemish in its history. And fingers crossed that's all it is. But let's move on from the story to the characters. So one of the big problems I had this season is that I don't think any of the characters are explored in a new, interesting way. In fact, most of the characters are exactly the same now as what they were at the beginning of the season. I don't think there's much character growth, I don't think there's much character development. In fact, I don't think there's much intent throughout this season to actually explore the characters. It's all about the central mystery of the burn and to establish the new locations. Early on, we do see some interesting stuff where we are seeing the effects of what happens if you do transport 1,000 years into the future. Surely that's going to have a huge psychological impact. Is everyone on board with it? Is everyone happy with it? Are there any regrets? It does explore that in some interesting ways, but then eventually it kind of just glosses over it and kind of forgets about it, to the point where, oh, everyone's happy by the end of it. And it's a bit odd that it's so easily forgotten despite being dwelled on for so much in the first half of the season. But beyond that, there's not a huge deal of really interesting character stuff. The only character that really does kind of get an arc, outside of the main character of Michael Burnham, is Jojo, played by Michelle Yeoh. Now, the problem with Jojo is that arguably she shouldn't have even been in this season. She probably shouldn't have been in this show for a while, actually. There's been a long rumoured, or well, actually not rumoured, it's been confirmed, she's getting her own spin-off series. And that's what this season seems to be establishing a bit more of where her story's going to go in the future. I don't want to get into spoilers, but her story is a bit on the more fantastical science fiction side of things, but it's also very unsatisfying in the way in which it answers some of the questions surrounding her and what's going on with her. So yeah, her character is interesting. I like her character, and she very well fits into the new universe that they've established here, but she doesn't always need to be there, and I think that's what this season's addressing, is that, hey, we don't necessarily need this character anymore. But being propelled 1,000 years in the future means that you're also going to see new faces and new characters showing up. So this season introduced the first trans and non-binary characters. That's cool, but it doesn't really make much of a difference to the show. It also introduces new admirals, new Federation characters, new villains. I've already talked about the main villain. Everyone who's new that's introduced, with the exception of one character, is just not that interesting. They're all just a little bit boring, they all feel a little underdeveloped. The new admiral, the new guy that's running the Federation, for example, is played by Oded Fehr, and I like him as an actor, but it's not until really later on in the season where they finally fully flesh him out a bit, where it does seem that, oh, he's got layers. It takes a long time for him to move on from being this like overly aggressive, like antagonistic kind of admiral to being, no, this guy, I get it, he's in a tough situation. So I like his performance. I eventually liked his character a bit, but it just takes a long time to get there. But yeah, all the new characters introduced this season, I was a little disappointed by. To talk about the production note, action scenes are exciting and fun and entertaining throughout the season. Sets, costumes, they're all great. They do update the Discovery a bit this season to match with the future setting that it's in. And this is where I'm a little iffy with the production side of things. I think maybe they went too far with it. I think they went too sci-fi. The fact that they've went into more like science fiction fantasy territory in certain regards, that's also matched with the design of the new Discovery. It's very subtle, it's not a huge difference, but it's there, and it doesn't always feel like Star Trek to me. It feels more like Star Wars. And yeah, I'm a little at odds with the new sci-fi technology side of things on this because it's cool, but it just feels a little out of place. I also think there's a bit overuse of lens flare. You'd think J.J. Abrams directed this, but he didn't. But yeah, there's a lot of this where characters are just standing there and there's a big bright light shining in your face and they're trying to be all stylistic and dramatic with it, and it doesn't always feel necessary. It feels like they are just trying to distract your attention and trying to make a pretty scene. Most of the times it works, but again, it's like, how many times are you going to do that effect? And the CGI. Sometimes I think the CGI is great, other times I think it's not good at all. In fact, there are moments where there are characters in this like CGI environment where there are like CGI creatures around them and stuff, and it's like so obviously not real. I think when you look at TV shows like The Mandalorian and you look at other big budget TV shows, science fiction shows, this one is somewhere in the middle in terms of its budget and the resources given to the CGI. It's not like as bad as like say the sci-fi series The Expanse in terms of the CGI, but it's not anywhere near as good as like The Mandalorian. It's very passable at times, most of it's good, but there are just a few distracting elements here and there. And I do have to praise them for the use of prosthetics and makeup and stuff to design the aliens, although noticeably, not too many aliens this season. There's only really Saru and there's one crew member who keeps popping up here and there. And of course there's Osyraa, who's green-skinned Orion, but let's face it, they've just plopped on some green paint. But yeah, Star Trek Discovery Season 3, very disappointing. I do think there are entertaining moments in there. Out of the 13 episodes, I would say there were 2 that are generally just good episodes. The rest is very middling, some of it's very cringe-worthy. I did not like the central mystery, it didn't intrigue me at all, it didn't capture my interest. And then the answers to it were really unsatisfying and just came off as a bit cheesy. But yeah, very disappointing, but I'm still going to watch this show, I'm still hoping for the future. There are some highs in this season, but there are some real lows in this season. And hopefully they capitalize on the highs and realize what did and didn't work moving into the next one. If you like this review, I am going to go into a couple of little spoiler points in just a bit. So if you haven't seen the season, go watch the season, then come back and watch the rest of this review. If you're leaving, subscribe to my channel before you go. The more subscribers I get, the more content like this I can make, and I really appreciate any sort of support you want to give me. You can also go over and follow me at _GrantBurton on Twitter and Instagram for all of my up-to-date thoughts and opinions as I get them. I also stream weekly now on twitch.tv/the_GrantBurton if you want to watch me play video games. Until next time though, thanks for watching. But if you're sticking around, now it's time to go into spoilers. Just a couple of little things that I want to touch on. So, this new future that they're in feels very empty. Obviously, warp travel isn't a thing, so there's only so much space that they can traverse. The Discovery having the spore drive allows them to go to different places very quickly, and it alleviates the need of warp travel. It makes the Discovery seem important. That's good. But I've never been a huge fan of the spore drive because that is diving into the more fantastical side of things. And I don't like it when Star Trek does that. At least I don't like it when Star Trek does that badly. So one of the problems with this new status quo of the galaxy with no warp travel is it makes the galaxy feel very empty. It makes it feel like there's only the Federation here, Osyraa here, and a couple of planets in the middle. That's obviously not the case. But this season fails to establish the new universe in a unique, interesting way, to the point where I don't know what the status quo is for the Klingons. I don't know what's going on with various other species or aliens or races that we already know. Instead, it just seems like there's the Federation and then there's the criminals, and that's it. And that's disappointing. So the last thing I want to talk about is the result of JoJo, her character. It seems like what they were going for is that because she's from an alternate universe and because she's now from an alternate universe that's also traveled through time, she's somehow out of place here. So I get what they're going for, but it's not explained incredibly well. And then when they try to answer it, while they try to address it, they fall back on a character or a event or moment from Star Trek the original series. Now, for fans of Star Trek the original series, this is either going to be something really cool and interesting, or it's going to be like a big slap in the face to you because maybe you don't like how it's done here. I don't know. Gotta be honest, I've never seen Star Trek the original series. It's the one Star Trek show I've never watched. I've tried watching it multiple times and I just can't get into it. I like all of Star Trek except the original series. So this character at this event means absolutely nothing to me. As far as I'm aware, they've never been in Star Trek since. So to fall back on this and then not explain what this is for viewers like myself who have no relation to the original series, who have no knowledge of what this character is, it's really odd. Because now, in order to find out what the hell's going on here, I've got to go watch the episode of the original series that it's in order to get the full explanation. I don't know who this is. When they're making a big dramatic moment of saying, oh, I am such and such, it's like, right, what does that mean? I don't know. The series doesn't say. So the whole resolution to JoJo is disappointing because it lacks explanation. There aren't answers. It just says, hey, I'm this all-powerful being, it seems. It's like, right, okay. If you were the Q from Star Trek Next Generation and Voyager, then that would make sense to me because I've seen that. But because you're relying so much on the original series character who I've got no relationship to, no idea who they are, why are they so powerful? Are they even an alien species? I don't know. Are they something else? Are they like a godlike being? I have no idea. So, referencing the original series might seem like fan service here, but it's very poorly done. And that's my review of Star Trek Discovery Season 3. I hope you've liked the review. Again, disappointed by this season. I don't think it's terrible by any means, but I did not enjoy most of it. And that's a shame. But anyway, thanks for watching.